for you today. Up first, Chiefs struggle against lowly Broncos, but still win 19-8. Are they still in Super Bowl contender? Oh, is that the question of the day? You know what I mean? Are they still a Super Bowl contender? Um, well, last night's game was pretty good for the Chiefs in a defensive sense because they stepped it up on that side of the ball. They were really good on the defensive side of the ball. They were able to force like 3 turnovers in the first quarter or something like that, 4 turnovers in the first half, and they pretty much sealed the game that way. But they didn't get much out of their offense last night because pretty much it seemed like they were coasting in the game. They just didn't seem very very into it. You know what I mean? They just knew that they were going to beat the Broncos, and that was kind of a bad mentality, in my opinion, to have. You know what I mean? Because they just had this idea that they were just going to beat the Broncos, and no worries, we'll just wrap these guys up and we'll take care of our business. But it was just too many close calls in that game, and the Broncos just did not take advantage of it. It was more about the Broncos losing than the Chiefs actually winning this game. That's the whole thing. And sometimes that just happens in the NFL. That's the way that you win in this league because your team is already used to winning. You know what I mean? And they already have it in their head that, okay, when the going gets tough, we'll get tougher. And that's exactly what they did last night on the defensive end. The offense was kind of confused last night. They really did not know what to do with the type of game plan that was presented to them by the Denver Broncos. But the thing was, they never panicked, and that's why they won this game. Andy Reid was doing some Madden almost joke stuff like, oh, let's do a quarterback sneak on a field goal. Let's go for it here on at this portion of the field, but we know that we're not going to make it. But still, I'm just going to go for it anyway. And that's just how much respect he had for the Denver Broncos. It was really none last night, pretty much. And Andy Reid has shown that over the years, if you're a bad team, he's going to really try to see how bad of a team you truly are. And that's exactly what I saw last night. But when it came down to the X's and O's and really getting down to the nitty gritty of the game, the Chiefs were levels ahead of the Broncos, and it just really showed. But the Broncos are a team that's really in disarray. They got guys there that don't want to buy into what Sean Payton's talking about. It's really not hard to see anymore. And then you have guys that are trying their best to salvage the season. And this is my last little point about the Broncos. You guys are so hard on the Broncos this season, but look at their first 3 games of the year. They could have been 3-0. Just think about that part right there. They could have been 3-0 the first 3 games of the season, okay? And they wound up not doing that, all right? First 3 games of the year. But actually, you know what? Let me take that back because the third game was that Dolphins game that they got absolutely crushed in. The first 3 out of 4 games, they could have won those games, okay? They could have been 3-1. And then think about it, they could have beat the Jets. So they could have easily been 4-1 going into this game. So the fixes for the Broncos are not really as crazy as everybody puts it out there to be. They really just need to figure out consistency, and they need to figure out a way to where the defense can keep games civil. You know what I mean? The defense has blown a bunch of leads in these games as well, too. Denver has led in every game that I was talking about that they could have won. So they could be a 3-2 team right now, but because of the way that the circumstances have went, or 4-2 actually, they could be a 4-2 team right now, but the way circumstances have went for this team, they're 1-5. They're 1-5 at this point. So it is what it is. But if you're in that locker room, you say to yourself, hey, you know what? We've weathered the storm and we're going to get 10 days off here. So we should be able to get this thing together. Now, when I get to my point about the Chiefs did not impress me last night. I felt like the defense had to really save them a lot last night. And yes, Patrick Mahomes is still a dynamic quarterback. He's the man. He's the guy. He's the MVP. He's the face of the NFL. Blah 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 blah. But at the end of the day, sometimes he can be a detriment to this team because he's playing too reckless. And yeah, I know it seems like I'm talking crazy because he went 30 for 40, 306, had a touchdown, but threw an interception, also was sacked twice, but should have been sacked a lot more times than that because his offensive line just isn't there. He had a QBR 94.4. That's decent. It's decent. And, pretty much having Kelsey last night being as open as he was, that was very helpful. Kelsey had 9 catches for 124 yards. And then you also had a good effort from Pacheco last night, who had 16 carries on 62 yards, and then had 36 yards through the air. So he wound up getting himself pretty much almost 100 total yards last night, which was a 0.25% of what went of their offense last night as well too. So there's a lot of things that the Chiefs are doing well as a team. Everybody's involved. But what happens when they start taking things away from you and you play against a better team? I'm looking at the Chiefs' schedule. When you look at their schedule, think about it. Who did they play on their schedule that's really a good team? Detroit. And Detroit beat them. Okay, you can go back and say, oh, Jacksonville. Jacksonville wasn't really that good at that point in time. Jacksonville is now getting into the flow of things. Okay, Chicago, forget about it. New York Jets, forget about it. Minnesota, forget about it. Denver, forget about it. 4 straight teams that are 4 cakewalks for this group. Now next week they have to host the Chargers. The Chargers will be the true test for the Chiefs this season to show us if they're really real. You know what I mean? If they can really play against these elite teams in the NFL. They're beating up on the average and below average teams, but at the end of the day, though, they it seems like they're just not good enough to stay up with the elite teams, even with your boy Patrick Mahomes. I'm sorry. Patrick Mahomes was able to just kind of play around last night because he had a Denver defense that kind of is already broken in a sense, but they were able to look decent last night because they know the tendencies of Patrick Mahomes. Now next week you're gonna have to deal with Joey. Well, if Bosa's healthy, Khalil Mack, and you have various new guys on that front 7 that are going to be key as well too. Only thing that the Chargers have issues with is that back end on the defensive end. And I'm telling you right now, that's going to wind up being the game of the week. I don't even know how that game is going to be at 1:25 in the afternoon. To be honest with you, that game should be a Sunday night football game. But you just can't keep putting the Chiefs in prime time. I know that. So pretty much with that, the Chiefs are still the defending champions. They still know what they're doing, but they don't have the personnel at this point right now that tells me they're going to repeat as Super Bowl champions or even get back to the Super Bowl. Anything can go down in the next 10, 12, 15 weeks or whatever, but still, today, right now, I'm not saying they're a Super Bowl team. They're not nowhere near a Super Bowl team because they had to skate by a bad team last night in the Broncos. But as I already just said, the Broncos kind of proved to us they're not that bad of a team. It's just that they're going through a bad stretch. You get me? You with me? All right. So we move forward, and where do we go from here? We go into